Look at me. I am going to get your sister back. Do you understand me? Nothing happens to people I protect.
Why do you protect me?
Because I've been doing it since before you walked through my door.
He made 3 calls in the first 5 minutes. She watched him from across the penthouse and understood for the first time what the 4.2 billion really meant in practical terms. It meant people answered their phones at 12:30 in the morning. It meant information came back in minutes. It meant resources that she had spent 2 weeks thinking of as abstract corporate power became entirely concrete and human and directed. His first call was to someone she did not know, and whose name he did not say, who apparently ran the private security operation that she had assumed was simply building security and was in fact something more comprehensive. Second call was to someone he called Lena, who knew Jade's current location from a tracking protocol Rafael had put in place the moment Sienna arrived at Cross Empire. He told Sienna this as he was on the call, and she felt multiple things simultaneously, none of them simple. Third call was to a number she recognized as a federal contact. Jade was in a service apartment 2 miles away. She had been there for 4 hours. She was unharmed. The 2 men who had taken her were outside the building, watching. By the time Rafael finished his third call, they were no longer outside the building. She gathered this from his expression and the very brief conversation with Lena, and chose not to ask for specifics. She went to Jade herself while Rafael stayed at the penthouse managing the operational aftermath of whatever had just happened. She held her sister on the doorstep of the service apartment and felt the specific relief of someone who had been carrying more weight than they acknowledged, suddenly lighter. Jade was shaken but okay. She asked what was happening. Sienna said, "Work things, it's handled, I'm sorry." Jade looked at her for a long moment and said, "You look different." Sienna said, "I'm fine." Jade said, "I didn't say you looked bad." She went back to the penthouse at 2 in the morning. She did not tell herself why. She sat on the long couch with her shoes off and a glass of something he had poured for her that she was not drinking, and he sat across from her in the chair that faced the city, and they were both quiet for several minutes, in the specific quiet of people who have been through something and have come out the other side of it. He told her about his father. He had not told her about his father before, not really, not the way he told it now. Eduardo Cross had come to New York from Seville at 22 with $300 and a contact address that turned out to be wrong. He had spent 7 years doing everything available before he found the work he was good at: international shipping logistics, the movement of goods through ports, the specific puzzle of getting things from one place in the world to another efficiently. He had built the first company around that puzzle because he loved it, not because of the money, which Rafael said was the thing about his father that he had never been able to explain to people who had only seen the 4.2 billion. Victor had been the CFO for 3 years when Eduardo was arrested. The evidence had been perfect, too perfect, Rafael said, in the way that evidence assembled by someone who knows exactly what investigators look for is always too perfect, but he had not understood that at the time. He had been 28. He had believed it was possible he had missed something. He had spent 6 months believing his father might be guilty before his father died. And he went back through everything with the eyes of someone who had nothing left to lose by finding the truth. He looked at the city and said, "Victor chose my father specifically because Eduardo was the kind of man who would be convicted on financial fraud and the board would believe it. Who had come from nothing and risen too fast and built too much, and whose success would always carry for certain people a question mark. He chose him because the story was already there. Victor just wrote the ending." She looked at him. She said, "How long have you been building this case?" He said, 3 years. She said, "Alone," he said, "until 14 days ago." She held his gaze. Held it until something behind his eyes shifted, the controlled composure opening briefly, the way a door opens and you see the room beyond and then closes again. She asked him why her. not as a question she expected a simple answer to. She had been turning it over for 2 weeks. The specific and slightly destabilizing fact that Rafael Cross had requested her specifically. Not Mia Torres, not an FBI forensic accountant. Her, by name, before her handler had confirmed the assignment. She had filed it as professional calculation and then found herself returning to it in the small hours of hotel nights when professional calculation felt insufficient. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There was a paper you published in 2021 on concealed asset structures in privately held corporations." He paused, the architecture of how you described it, the way you understood not just the mechanics but the intent behind the concealment, the specific motivation of someone who hides money not purely for gain but for control. He looked at her. Most people who analyze financial crime understand the what. You understood the why. I needed someone who understood the why. She sat with that, then she said, "That's not the whole reason." He looked at her for a moment and then the corner of his mouth moved, the almost smile, the one she had been seeing in fragments for 2 weeks. He said, "No," she said, "then tell me the rest." He said, "The rest is something I am not able to be professional about, and I have been trying very hard to be professional about this entire situation." She looked at him across the room. The city was outside. The hour was past 2. Her sister was safe. The case was almost done. She said, "How long have you been trying?" He said, "Since approximately the moment you walked through my door and lied to my face without flinching." She said nothing. He said nothing. The city had been there for 400 years and would be there when they were gone, and all of its lights were burning just for them right now. She should have gone back to the hotel. It was 3 in the morning and she had an assignment and a handler and a professional obligation that was already more complicated than it should be. She knew all of this. She stood up to leave. He stood at the same time, not to stop her, just the automatic motion of a man who stood when someone was leaving. They were 3 feet apart and the room was very quiet. She looked at him. He was looking at her. And there was a moment, the specific length of a held breath, where everything that had been building for 2 weeks was simply present in the room between them, too heavy and too real to professionally categorize. His hand moved, not toward her. He was reaching for the glass she had left on the table, but the motion brought him closer, and she did not move back. His eyes were very dark at 3 in the morning in the penthouse light, and he was 2 feet away, and she thought, "I have never in 12 years of this work allowed anything to become real." She also thought, "I am not sure I have a choice about this one." He said, very quietly in the tone he used when he was saying the true thing instead of the correct thing, "You should go." She said, "Yes." She did not move. Neither did he. For a moment that stretched. Her phone rang. The sound was enormous in the quiet apartment. She stepped back, picked it up. It was Marcus Reed, her handler, calling at 3 in the morning, which he had never done before. She answered. His voice was wrong. She had known Marcus Reed for 6 years, and she knew every register of his voice, and the register she was hearing right now was the one she associated with the moment before everything changed.
Sienna, Victor has approached federal oversight. He has fabricated evidence against you and Cross both. They're moving tomorrow morning. You have tonight.
Victor didn't wait for us. He's framing both of us.